No, wait, don't. Let me explain. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I know. We're the Milli PM2 Pair 3 group, and this is, what is this thing? What is this monstrosity you see in front of you? There's no Spidey hole. It doesn't have a weird name. It's not an ambiguous pronunciation based on an ambiguous spelling of a weird word that we kind of know. What is this? This, my friends, might be the best production knife that I've ever held. This is the Koenig Arius Generation 4, featuring Blue Twill Alutex handle, titanium on the sides. This is a knife that I recently purchased from DLT Trading, and honestly, it's a long time coming, so let me tell you the story. So last year, Mr. Thomas Moore and I are walking through the Blade Show, and we're checking things out, looking to see what's available, and all of a sudden we trip on a table. And the funny thing about Blade Show is there's so many knives, and there's so many tables that you kind of lose track of where you are. And Tom realized where we were, and he stops us and he says, "Hey man, you got to check one of these out." And I remember we were in a hurry to go see someone else, and I didn't have a lot of time, but I remember holding it, flicking it, and thinking, that's a really nice knife, but we got to go. So we left, and unfortunately we didn't manage to circle back around. And now, fast forward a year later, ironically, also, by the way, at the show, I met the guys at DLT Trading, and I met Jason at DLT. And now, fast forward a year, and I have my own Koenig Arius, and I purchased it from DLT. So, shout out to DLT and to Koenig. So, that's it for my way back when story. Let's talk about the knife itself. To start with, the size of the knife. Honestly, I know what you're thinking. It looks kind of big on the camera, but let me show you. I put it next to my favorite paramilitary 2, and it's actually kind of in the same ballpark, isn't it? I think it's that sexy waistline right here that really makes that knife look bigger than it is. In reality, it's not really that much bigger than a paramilitary 2. It just isn't. The blade length is a bit longer because the fact that it's a flipper moves this back a ways, so it makes a little more edge available to the user. But the things that really make this knife a better knife are just the fit and finish details that go into making it. If you take the knife apart, what you find is that there's actually a ramp that's carved into the blade where the detent ball slides up it, and as the knife closes, you can feel the pressure from the lock bar pushing on the blade. And when it finally locks into place and it's closed, the knife does not want to pop open. It's pretty sturdy. But when you flick it, the blade is going to open. The detent ball is going to slide down the ramp, and it actually assists in opening the blade. So you would swear that this is spring assisted by the way that it springs open, but it's actually not. It is not spring assisted. The blade itself is M390 steel, pound for pound, probably the best steel on the market. If you take all three things into consideration, toughness, edge retention, and stainlessness, this is the steel that is the current benchmark for, mainstream knife use. A couple of hot new steels are out there on the horizon that are still being used in limited areas, but widespread, this is going to be the steel you want. Beautiful grind on this knife. This was purchased with what they call satin flats. So we have somewhat of a shine on the flats, whereas we have the grind on the edge itself. Let's talk about Alutex for a minute. Alutex is a really interesting material. In my world, I know Alutex through Aramis Akhmedov, who makes beautiful Alutex scales for lots of different types of knives. And I know Alutex to be very durable. I know it to be very sturdy. It's very much a high quality carbon fiber like material, but the addition of aluminum fibers in it actually makes it have this really cool blue jean effect. So the blue dye mixed with the, the blue carbon fiber likely with the silver in the aluminum just really gives us a beautiful look. Now this is also called the Arius, and to me this looks like a beautiful blue sky. So really, really pretty. I did disassemble an Arius recently, and I found that the construction was surprisingly simple. We have a backspacer back here with 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's also 2 pins in the backspacer. All of that creates a very, very good lineup for the front and back scales. So they line up perfectly. When you pin them together, they're not going anywhere. The clip is screwed from inside the scales, and then recently it was shared with me that if you look down inside the little cutaway here on the scale, it will be printed what version of the knife that you're holding. Comparing this knife to a Gen 3, the Gen 3 seems to have a slightly different lock bar composition here. This is slightly different. In feel, they honestly feel very, very similar. I don't notice a dramatic difference in the way that they flick. Allegedly, the 3s are slightly harder to use than a 4, but I don't find that to be true. Being a left-handed person, I do intend to carry these left-handed, and you probably watch me do it now. If I keep my thumb over here, not an issue for opening and closing this knife. And then I'm so used to using a frame lock with the wrong hand that it doesn't even bother me anymore. So thankfully, in the pocket, this knife sits pretty nice because the pocket clip has a lot of space here, and it's fairly close to the end of the knife, so rides pretty good, left-handed or right-handed. So let's talk about weight for a minute. Your standard Spyderco Paramilitary 2 is going to come in around 3.6 to 3.9. This is 3.9 ounces. The Arius comes in at less than 4.9. The titanium, the full titanium models come in at 4.9. This one is probably less. I haven't had a chance to weigh it yet. Actually the same weight as a Chris Reeve in Cozy. This is also 4.9. So if I take away the Paramilitary 2 for a minute and I compare the Cozy to the Arius, first thing I'll talk about is price point. This is a $450 knife. This is a $750 knife. So the main reason that the knife is so much more expensive, of course, is the blade steel is quite a bit nicer. So we're dealing with M390 versus S35VN. We have the addition of the twill on the scale, much more expensive material. But then the magic really comes in the pivot and in the lock bar and in the way that the Arius is dialed in. When I use this Chris Reeve, I feel everything about it is heavy and clunky. And I'm sorry, Chris Reeve fans, but you're being outmatched and being lapped by the competition at this time. There is nothing wrong with the way this knife is built. If you go back, you can watch my review of this knife, and I do think it's well made. However, this pivot is absurdly heavy. There's just no reason for it. There's no reason to have a Millennium Falcon shaped washer in there that holds grease. You heard me right. This knife uses grease on the pivot. It actually comes with a tube of grease to re-grease it. I can't fathom putting grease into a pivot on a knife. That just seems totally contradictory because the coefficient of friction on lithium grease is quite high. So it's true this does have vault-like action, which I've heard many times from Chris Reeve fans about how important that is. But I just don't think it needs to be that heavy. Truly, this knife is actually kind of hard to open one-handed. And because it's so thin, with hands like mine, I have a very hard time holding this knife without pinching the lock bar as I'm trying to open it. So I find that this knife, I want to love it. I want to admire it. But I feel like it's just anachronistic. When I look at this knife, I see total innovation and just little improvements everywhere. It just opens like a dream and it closes like a dream as well. just no effort to open and close it. So in the real world, this is a knife you can use. You can actually take it out and chop it up, so to speak. I love the look of the back of the knife. And then also, my new favorite feature on a nice pocket knife is I want this part of the handle to make good contact with the palm of my hand. And then when I grip it, I want this finger and this finger to be able to press it into my palm. And then these fingers are also pressing it this way. So down and over. And then my thumb can ride on the back of the blade, and I just have a really good grip on this knife. I feel like I could use this for a long time, cutting boxes, cutting cardboard, cutting paper, cutting whatever I need to cut, cutting rope. In the right hand, it's even better because now the clip is in the place where it ought to be. It's in the small of my fingers here, and is really unnoticeable. So yeah, as far as for my lefty bros out there, this is not an offensive knife to use left-handed. I find it's pretty easy to hold. The edge of the blade gives you a lot of cutting surface. The tip is sharp but not delicate, so I don't really worry about having to chip the tip off accidentally. Really just a terrific knife overall. So I have to thank DLT for this knife, for this beautiful knife. I have to thank Thomas Moore for telling me about it, for making it all possible, because without him mentioning it, I never would have tried it. Now, maybe you don't want the fancy pants knife. Maybe you want a simpler style. This season, they also released this knife, which I purchased from EDC Foundry. And I don't have a sticker, guys. I'm sorry. I would show you an EDC Foundry sticker at this time. But Wes over at EDC Foundry released these Koenigs as well. I shouldn't say it. Let me rephrase that. This was not an exclusive for his store. They're also available at DLT. However, I got it from EDC Foundry. And now this is an all titanium knife with this really cool pattern that's been milled into the scale. And I'm kind of sentimental, honestly, guys. I'm kind of sentimental for patterned titanium. I think this is a cool look. It has a nice grippy grip feel to it that feels good in your fingerprints. And then just a hint of color. We've got this really cool blue backspacer back here at the butt of the knife. So this knife is $640. So $640, $750. There's also a carbon fiber model that has beautiful carbon fiber on it. That's going to be another step up in price. And then from time to time, they do have things like gold Damascus and Timascus and other things that are coming along. I shouldn't say Timascus. I don't think they've done that. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. They've got different scale materials, so you can get pretty fancy pants on these. One last comparison I want to make is to the Spyderco Fluted Military. I'll be honest with you. If you love the Koenig and you love everything about a Koenig, but you just don't want to spend the money, fellas, I think you need to go seek one of these out. It's not an Arius. It's not. But this knife is extremely well made. We have a 4-inch blade, slightly longer edge than we find on the Arius. The handle, of course, is quite a bit longer. But for weight, this knife is not very heavy. I believe it weighs in at 5.3 ounces, so a little bit heavier than an Arius. But that being said, we have a phenomenally good pivot. We have a phenomenally good lockup on the frame lock. We have a nice curved handle that's, of course, comfortable in the hand. Everybody who's ever held a military will tell you that it's very, very comfortable to hold. This is definitely a knife that you can work and use, and the way that the angle of the blade swoops away from the center line of the handle, you're going to get a good cutting edge on this knife that is in a place where you can actually use it. You don't have a flip tab here, but you always have the Spidey flick. Having that Spidey hole is definitely a wonderful feature to have. So this is a discontinued model. That being said, you can purchase these all day long for a surprisingly low price. I recently purchased one for $130. This one I purchased for it's part of a package deal, so it's hard to estimate. You could say that I spent $200 on it. So I think that this knife is a total bargain. You're going to get some similarities in terms of like the grip and the feel of the knife in the hand. You're going to get comparable weight in the hand when you're holding it. Where it's going to vary wildly, of course, is that this is S30V steel and this is M390. So we're talking about a you know, premium European engineered steel. This is a very, very good pocket knife steel, but it just isn't in the same ballpark. But that being said, if you kind of want to start playing in this world of titanium knives, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful knife that you can pick up used. You can get it on a lot of the forums that are available on Facebook and on Instagram and on Reddit. You're going to be able to find them. But this is going to give you kind of a similar feel. So, appreciate you watching. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope you get a little interested about these Koenig knives. I would highly recommend getting to your local dealer and checking them out because they are just gorgeous. Everything's just perfectly dialed in on these. I just can't say enough about it. If you go to a handmade knife, you're going to get better action. You're going to get a better lock. You're going to get better pivot because the person who's making the knife is literally dialing in each knife with probably more time and more attention than a factory can do. But I just have yet to find a better factory-built knife than the Koenig Arius. Sorry, CRK. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please join us in the Facebook group. You can find us on Facebook, of course. We're the Spyderco Millie PM2 Para 3 Club. You can also find us on Instagram, and we'd love to have you on. So thanks for watching.